In the podcast episode, Jordan Peterson engages in a discussion with guest Logan Lancing. The conversation delves into the intersection of Marxism, postmodernism, and queer theory, exploring how these ideologies have infiltrated education and society at large, particularly affecting children. Lancing articulates a critical perspective on the alliance between Marxism and postmodernism, which he terms postmodern neo-Marxism. He explains that Marxism, traditionally viewed as a meta-narrative focused on class struggle and economic theory, has evolved into a more complex ideological framework that incorporates postmodern skepticism towards overarching narratives. This fusion has led to a dialectical approach that emphasizes the conflict between oppressors and the oppressed across various social dimensions, including race, gender, and sexuality. Lancing argues that Marxism is not merely an economic theory, but a theological framework that posits a vision of human creativity and social potential. He references Marx's notion of species being, which suggests that humans are inherently creative and social beings capable of transforming the world. However, he contends that this potential is stifled by the structures of power established by the bourgeoisie, necessitating a revolutionary response from the oppressed. The discussion shifts to queer theory, which Lancing asserts is a significant offshoot of the postmodern neo-Marxist framework. He clarifies that queer theory is not simply about celebrating diverse sexual identities, but is fundamentally about opposing the norm. The definition of queer he adopts emphasizes that it is an identity without essence, existing solely in opposition to what is considered normal or legitimate. This perspective, he argues, is particularly dangerous when applied to children, as it encourages a rejection of stable identities in favor of fluidity and chaos. Lancing highlights that queer theorists intentionally seek to create crises in children's lives to disrupt their desire for normalcy. This approach, he argues, is abusive as it leverages social and emotional pressures to instill feelings of guilt and confusion in young people. He emphasizes that this manipulation is not merely a byproduct of ideology, but a deliberate strategy to reshape societal norms and values. A significant portion of the conversation focuses on the infiltration of these ideologies into the education system. Lancing recounts his awakening to the issues within education after becoming a father, realizing the profound impact that educational content and pedagogical approaches could have on his child's development. He expresses concern over the increasing prevalence of radical ideologies in schools, including the promotion of drag queen performances for young children and the segregation of students based on race. The guest argues that the educational apparatus has been hijacked by a religious cult of ideologues who prioritize social justice over traditional educational values. He points out that teachers' unions overwhelmingly support leftist political agendas, which further entrenches these ideologies in the classroom. Lancing stresses the importance of parental involvement and awareness, urging parents to engage with their children about what they are learning and to foster strong relationships that can withstand ideological pressures. Throughout the podcast, the theme of language as a tool of deception emerges prominently. Lancing argues that the left has effectively redefined key terms such as diversity, equity, and inclusion to serve their ideological ends. He contends that while these terms may appear noble on the surface, their true meanings have been distorted to promote conformity and suppress dissent. The guest emphasizes that this linguistic manipulation is not accidental, but a strategic effort to control discourse and marginalize opposing viewpoints. He highlights the dangers of this approach, noting that it creates an environment where individuals are afraid to speak out for fear of being labeled as bigots or oppressors. This climate of fear, he argues, stifles genuine dialogue and critical thinking, ultimately harming society as a whole. Lancing delves into the psychological implications of these ideologies, particularly for children. He argues that the promotion of fluid identities and the rejection of stable norms can lead to increased mental health issues, as young people struggle to navigate a world devoid of clear guidelines. He asserts that the emphasis on identity politics fosters a sense of victimhood and resentment, which can be psychologically damaging. Lancing also discusses the broader social consequences of these ideologies, warning that the division between oppressors and the oppressed creates a culture of conflict and animosity. This polarization undermines social cohesion and makes it increasingly difficult for individuals to engage in constructive dialogue across ideological divides. In conclusion, Lansing urges listeners to cultivate curiosity and critical thinking in the face of these challenges. He emphasizes the importance of understanding the ideologies at play and the need for parents to take an active role in their children's education. By fostering open communication and encouraging independent thought, he believed families can resist the pervasive influence of radical ideologies.